Hello everyone. Welcome to our first ever live stream of the 2022. Now, before even I get into anything, just tell me in the comments if you can hear me loud and clear, and then we will get started. Boy, and I'm really super excited, but just let's just check that the audio is all good and there's no technical difficulties, and then we will get into the amazing content that I have prepared for you. So, awesome. Brandon says, hear you loud and clear. Thank you so much, Brandon. Thanks for that heads up. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, whatever is the time of the day. All the ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls, welcome to our first ever live stream of 2022. First up, let's start with a very happy new year for all of you, wherever you may be watching from, um, for joining me on this. And I hope you have had a stellar start to the new year, and things are all looking good and amazing and exciting for you. They have certainly been quite exciting for me since the start of the year. We we went on a holiday just after Christmas to South Island of New Zealand, and we were on a road trip for a couple of days. And around New Year time, we were in Christchurch, which is in the south of New Zealand. And it was just a magical time, just spending some time with friends and chilling out and relaxing and spending the time on the beach. So I hope you had something fun and memorable as well. Okay, so we got people joining in. While everybody joins in, I thought we'll just do some welcome things. Just tell me where you're watching from. I could already see that we have got quite a few people from all over the world, and I was reading through some of the earlier chat messages as I was prepping for the session. But let's just get the hellos going. So I could already see some of the names of the people that that kind of come in every now and then. David says loud and clear in Houston, Texas. Hello, David. Um, Again, this is Liz, also from Texas. Yogita is from India. Shailesh is also from India. And Rich is from Las Vegas. Um, and Peter says Kingston, Surrey, England. Oh, wow. We got people from all over the world. Susan from Canada. Some of you might be thinking, where are you, Chandu? I live in Wellington, New Zealand. So if this is your first time here on the live stream, or if this is one of the first few times you're watching one of my videos, uh, you might think where. Sunil Kumar says YouTube, India. Oh, well, I hope you're not technically inside the YouTube offices, but and Charis says hi from Cyprus. Wow. And Manikanta says Bangalore, India. And Susan from Elliott City. And Wasim says Pakistan. Hi Chandu. Hi Wasim. And this is Douglas M1 Race Support from Brazil, Sao Paulo. Hi Douglas. Hey, and this is just going on. And Sadanand, yes, I am from Andhra Pradesh. Hi Sadanand. Coincidentally, I am also from Andhra Pradesh. I happen to just now live in Wellington, New Zealand. Um, and we got quite a few people. Moses from Dubai, and oh man, this is just crazy. I mean, I got hundreds of messages here, so I'm not gonna read everything. Um, I just posted a poll on that, and I'm just reading the results of that. I asked you, are you new to Power BI? And 60% of you said yes, completely, and then 36% said no, I use it a little bit, and then 4%, 5% said I use it a lot. So about two-thirds of the population is completely new to Power BI, which is perfect because that's where we are gonna start. Um, we'll take some questions later on specific to data, but Sanjay says, Sanjay from Tawa, Wellington, which happens to be just across the down the road from where I live. And I happen to know Sanjay as well because I used to work with him in the Ministry of Business a while ago. Hey Sanjay, I hope all is good. And all right, let's start before my coffee gets too cold. Eh, So the the agenda for today is quite simple. I got a very simple presentation which will kind of set the scope for us and set some ground rules for what's going to happen for the next 90 to an hour and maybe 2 hours. So that's the expected duration of this class. If this is one of the first times you are coming in for the live stream, the way these things flow is I have some sample data files, so you're more than welcome to kind of follow along as I show the techniques and ideas. But you can also just sit back, have a beverage or a snack, or just chill in your couch and watch the whole thing, make some mental notes, and then go back and practice in your own time. But if you happen to have two devices or you're watching on a laptop or whatever, then you're more than welcome to practice, because that way you could ask questions which are directly related to what I'm showing. So there is a sample file available. It is already linked in the description. I'll show the details in a minute. And then I'll just get into Power BI. I'll demonstrate certain techniques, explain the concepts. I'll take some questions, and then we'll continue like that. So the topic for today is data analysis with Power BI. I'll get into that, but I just want to, um, make sure that I'm not missing anything important. All right. So this, feel free to say hello and introduce yourself. Tell me where you are calling in from. Or one of my favorite questions from the regular live streams is, "What are you drinking?" I'm always fascinated by what people drink when they watch. For your reference, I'm having some coffee, and it's a little bit around 5 a.m. in the morning in New Zealand. So perfect time for a coffee and get started the day. So that's that. What I'll do is I'll set up my screen share, and then we'll. So I have got a very simple presentation for you. This is how normally all my live streams are. The presentation kind of sets the tone for everything. I'll get into the slides in a minute. Let's just see what's happening here. What is the Lee is having vodka tonic. Cheers, my brother. And Christine is having black tea. That's awesome. And Peter is also having a black coffee cold. uh, and Abhishek Agarwal says, "Khoon pi raha hu," which simply means I'm sucking blood. I hope you're not a mosquito, Abhishek. Uh, and Fakir is having tea. Pubby and is having Coke Zero. And I think this is a question that people are asking. Will this recording be uploaded? It is on YouTube, so technically it will be there. The way most of my live stream recordings will be is that they are on their own playlist on my channel, and I usually leave them on for some time. And if the stream itself is good enough and it's like a well designed content, then I won't touch it. But occasionally I might just take it off. So my suggestion is, feel free to just stay back and watch this thing now, and then that way you can ask questions and everything. But if you got to go and do something else, feel free to drop off and check back whenever you can. Um, and of course, a lot of people are having coffee. Jayasri is having coffee. uh, Jose is having coffee as well. And wow, out of the box Excel is having a beer. Cheers. And Manju asks, do we have access to the presentation? Unfortunately not. This is just, there's nothing really in the presentation, as you will see. It's just kind of setting the tone. You will have access to the workbooks though. Okay, let's just look at the slides, shall we? So, where? All right. So as I said, data analysis with Power BI, that is our topic for today. My name is Chandu, and I will be your instructor, teacher, or host for this live stream. I'm just going to turn off this thing. And so the key skills that you will gain in this particular session over the next 90 minutes are, you will understand how to use Power Query to clean up your data within Power BI. You will understand how to do data modeling. You will understand introductory, DAX, and Power Pivot. Again, each of these topics alone could justify a proper live stream, or in my opinion, they could justify like well over 20-30 hours of actual video teaching material. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give you a holistic perspective of how everything works together within Power BI. So I'll of course get into as much as needed, but there is going to be more left out than introduced at the end of this thing. And then how to work within visuals within Power BI, and of course a overall Power BI familiarity. So when you finish this, you will understand how Power BI is useful, where it fits in the spectrum of data analysis, and how to use it, how to get going with it. The specific agenda, oh, those are the skills that you will learn. The agenda for me, what I'm going to actually do is, we'll start by talking about what is Power BI. Then I'll show you how to clean the data set that I have given you. I will then answer some business questions using Power BI. So data analysis questions, we will pose them. I have made some notes on what questions to ask. I'll just read them out, and then I'll tell you how we could use Power BI to answer that. We will talk a little bit about trends and forecasting, time permitting. And then obviously what happens when you finish the analysis within Power BI, how to save it, how to publish it, and how you should deal with situations when your data changes. So how do you refresh this? And finally, I will conclude by talking about resources to learn Power BI, because as I said, while this 90 minutes is a solid introduction to Power BI, at the end of it, you might be hungry for more. So I'll give you some of my favorite resources for learning Power BI, and you could take that and you can start learning Power BI as and when you are ready. So that's that. For the purpose of the whole thing, we are gonna use a made-up company called Awesome Chocolates. Some of the people who come to my live streams every now and then or watch my YouTube channel are already familiar with the Awesome Chocolates company. This is a company that sells chocolates across various countries in the world. So I have made a sample data set available to you. The file is already linked in the video description. There are actually 3 files available to you. One is a blank data set file. One is extra data file, which you can use to test what happens when you add data to your existing data sets and how the refresh process works. And the third file is a sample Power BI report that I have already built using the data set. So at the end of the live stream, I would have built another file altogether, and that file may not even look like the file that I shared with you. So at the end of the stream, I will edit the description, and then I will add the 4th link as well, so that there's going to be 4 files. Right now there is 3. You don't need to download all the 3. You just need to download the blank file if you want to start now. So before we begin, I want to just clear up 3 things. Of course, I did already talk about the downloads, which is about the blank data file. Completed report is also there, but as I said, at the end of the live stream, I will add one more file, which is more current and accurate based on what actually happened in the stream. This is because most of the time when I do the live stream, I have some agenda in my mind, but people could ask questions, and depending on what questions I get, and if the question is more interesting than what I want to say, then I might just talk about that. So that's that. So there's going to be another file, but the files are there. Go ahead and download them and use them. You don't need to download right now. If you're not following along, you can just sit back and later on come back to the YouTube page and download. The video will be available for replay for at least 1 week. At the end of 1 week, if I need to make some changes, or if I want to take it out and split it into separate smaller videos, I'm gonna do that. And you are more than welcome to ask questions. Here is my humble request. We have almost 700 people watching the live stream right now, and as we get into the topic, there's going to be more people joining. So please ask questions with a Q in the beginning. That will help me spot the questions in the heap of chat messages that I get. And you're requested to stay on the topic. You can literally ask questions about anything and everything in the world, but I will not be answering questions that are not on the topic for the day, which is data analysis with Power BI. So feel free to ask questions on that topic so that I can help you most. And if you already asked a question and I didn't get back to you, please don't repeat. This is quite rude. And if you continuously post the same message, I'm gonna have to put you on timeout or lock you out of the stream, because this is just completely ruins the experience for all of us. So those are the 3 rules. Very, very simple to follow. Put a Q in the beginning, stay on the topic, and don't repeat. And of course, you can support the stream. You can buy me a cup of coffee. Well, not a real cup of coffee. This is already made downstairs, by using the super chat or super stickers feature on the video. Occasionally when I say this, people ask, oh, how do I do this? So I got a video for you on how to do this on this particular live stream. It's very simple process. You go to the chat window, and under that there is a button, and you just tap on that and specify whatever is your message or chat sticker. Type something that you want to say, and then you can purchase it. It's that simple, and you don't have to do it. That's not really what it is. But if you feel like, hey Chandu, I want to support you, then that's one way to do it. So that's it. Let's now get into Power BI. Before I jump, I'm just gonna have a quick glance into the chat window. There's about 56 messages while I was talking, so I'm just gonna read through some of these. So Barbara says she could not download the file. I did test the file download link earlier. Is anyone else having the problem? I'm just gonna double check this. Yep, it works for me. So maybe you have not copied the entire path, Barbara. You may want to try that again. So just locate the completed link and copy paste the whole thing, and that might work. And Claiborne says, would it be possible to enhance your microphone volume? Is anyone else having the audio issue? Because I thought it was loud and clear. If there is a problem at your end, I'm just gonna continue in Sherpa. And how is it now? Yeah, okay, some people are having the file issue, but others are not. You may want to, when you are copying and using the link, you need to use the whole link, because there's some spaces and you need to paste it in browser or whatever to download. As you could see, I downloaded it. I downloaded it last night, and then I downloaded it again now. So it does work. I could paste the link in the chat, but it's not gonna really help the experience much, because the way it's going, and some people are saying my audio is too loud. Okay, so I'm guessing it's good. I just want to say a big thanks to George for a super sticker, as well as there's one more here. This is from Bhuvan. for a super sticker as well. Thank you, both of you. And okay, so the audio seems to be all right. Was able to download files. Okay, now the voice is super better. And as I said, you don't have to download anything. If you don't want to download, you can just sit back and watch the whole thing. But if you want to follow along, you can download. And the download links will be available for you even when the stream is ending. The description will be there. So don't sweat about it. As long as you have Power BI, if you are following along, you can even use any of your data sets also. So that's that. And this is from Avej Sheikh, another super sticker. Thank you, Avej. And I don't want to go into my YouTube settings now and add the link there because that's going to be a pain to adjust while I'm talking. So unfortunately, if you're having an error where the others are able to download, you may just want to check it. I think there might be some extra spaces that you're copying from either end. All right, there's some issues with the download, but I apologize if you're having that, but hopefully most people are able to get it. And let's just open Power BI. This is the file that you download. Even if you're not able to download it, as I said, this is just a made up file with what I thought we could cover. But if we are gonna actually build everything from scratch. So all you need is the blank data file to build. And at the end of it, you can come back and download it. Downloading this is not really important. So I'm assuming you all know how to install and download and set up Power BI. That's quite trivial and fairly straightforward process. So I'm not gonna go into the greater detail of that. But you can just search on internet for download Power BI, or you can go to, if you have Windows 10 or Windows 11, you can go to the Microsoft Store app on your computer, this one. And from there, you can search for Power BI and install. The way, if you install it through the app on the Store app on your computer, then it automatically updates by default every month. Power BI changes every month. There's a newer version coming up. Whereas if you download and install, sometimes you may have to trigger the update process manually or say okay or whatever. So we will open a brand new workbook within Power BI, and from there we will get started. So here is my Power BI. Before I do this, I want to bring a note from our sponsors. So let me go and get our sponsor. This is my sponsor hat. There is no sponsor really. I am the sponsor of this video. I just want to say a big thanks to you for tuning in from wherever in the world you are and watching this video. And thank you so much. And I hope you will have a good day. So now let's get into Power BI. That was the joke that I had. And so here is our Power BI. When you open Power BI, depending on how you got it set up, you might see one of the many welcome screens that come up. So it could be a welcome screen like this. It might even be a welcome screen that says, please log into Power BI, or asks you to set up and all of that. So whatever may be the welcome screen, if you have a account, the account for Power BI is free to sign up. But there's kind of like over the time, Microsoft has made the process a little bit more tedious than it needed to be. So the free sign up process it requires you to have an organizational account or something funny like that. But back when I signed up a few years ago, there was a different process. So as I said, every month they change. So depending on which monthly version you're using and how up to date you are, you might see one of the welcome screens. Needless to say, there's going to be an X button, which is what I'm going to use. I'll close it. So we'll end up with this page here. And from here, we can now get into the thick of it. Again, if you are using a really old version of Power BI, you may not even see these buttons here. It might be simply blank. But over the last few months, I think Microsoft added a more friendlier launch page wherein you can say, this is what I want with my data when you get into Power BI from the beginning. So before we even get in there, let's just give a simple plain English definition of what Power BI is. In my opinion, Power BI is a data analysis and reporting software. Okay, it kind of dumps it down to a smaller level, but it has other powerful capabilities as well. But when you're getting started, it's helpful to think of it like a data analysis and reporting software. So essentially, you need to feed it some data, and then it can analyze, it can produce the reports, and then those reports, you can take them out and you can share them with your audience. So that's pretty much what it is. If you think of it like that, a parallel software for Power BI is Excel or Tableau or Google Spreadsheets or any of these other tools, because we could use all of them for also doing data analysis and reporting. There are some key differences between these individual tools, and it's gonna be like a massive lesson just in itself to talk about how each of them differ and where they fit in. But Power BI is primarily used for the BI part of it, which is business intelligence. So it is used when your data sets are a little bit more complicated, there is lots of data, or the data is coming in from multiple places, and you need to both implement manual as well as some automated techniques for analyzing data and all of that. Then generally Power BI is a preferred platform because it is capable of dealing with much complex and bigger data sets. Power BI is one of the preferred software for doing enterprise level reporting and data analysis. So in large companies, medium companies, or small companies, wherever the volume is too much, you want to use a tool that is specifically designed to deal with such higher volume. So that's where Power BI really kind of fits in. Okay, so that's what Power BI is at a very high level. What we will do is we will use it to do the data analysis part, produce some reports. So essentially, whatever Power BI is defined for, that's what we are going to use it, so that you can see the whole journey. So there's been a few super messages and chats. So I just want to give them a shout out before I kind of forget that. So I think we did the page, and then Stephen has a super sticker. Thank you, Stephen. And then Vishal as well. And my friend from Tawa, Sanjay, also sends a super sticker. Thanks, Sanjay. So that's the thing. People are saying there's a bit of video clarity issue. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off my face. I'll come back and show my face every now and then when we kind of reach a point with questions. But for now, we'll just get full screen on Power BI so that the video is, you get more out of this. Let's see if there is there's one question from Manikandan. Sir, without Excel knowledge, can we learn Power BI? So you don't need Excel knowledge to learn Power BI. These are two separate tools in my opinion. And you can learn either of them individually. You don't need one for another. What you do need to kind of learn and appreciate Power BI is some sort of business and data knowledge. Okay, if you don't have those, then Power BI just becomes a software for data analysis and reporting. But how you analyze the data, what business context you will be using, that is all going to be a blank picture for you. So you need to have that perspective coming in. This is where normally people say having prior Excel experience, because there is no quantitative way of justifying what you know. So people just say, do you know Excel? Because that means you know how to work with data. But if you don't have Excel knowledge, that's fine. As long as you have a sense of data and you have a sense for analysis and you know what business you're in and how things work, that should all be good. So that's that. There's a few more stickers. Ambarusu Ambarasu sends in a super sticker. Thank you, Ambarasu. And Muhammad, as well as Jali Ali 84. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't pronounce your name wrong. And Asta says, how to download Power BI on Mac? It's not available on Microsoft website. I'm not even sure if this is something that Microsoft has released or is planning to release or has no plans to release. But I don't own a Mac, so I have never had that question. But you may want to just check, or maybe someone else in the chat who is using Mac can chip in. But I don't remember seeing any tweets or anything about this. Jayant Kumar says, of course, you can learn it. Okay, so this is a rebuttal to that. And MK says, can we learn Power BI in 30 days with 3 hours effort per day? I don't recommend doing such kind of binge learning. Power BI is a fairly technical and deeply, lot of rich features are there. And if you kind of rush through it in 30 days, you are going to miss out a lot than what you will learn. So my recommendation is you set yourself a goal of, I'm going to do project A or project B or report A in the next 30 days, and just do it. And then kind of set another goal. That would be way better than trying to rush through with kind of like a 90-hour learning window like this. It's going to be, you will just learn where every button is and everything is, but you won't really have a sense of how things work if you go like that. Okay, we need to jump into the content. It's already about half an hour and we've been still talking about this. So thank you so much for all the lovely super stickers and messages that are coming from Liz and Springbok and Stephen and few others there. Thank you so much for all your support and love. But we are going to get in. So the very first thing that we'll do is we'll bring in our blank data file. The data file that I gave you. I'm just going to quickly open the Excel workbook here so we can kind of take a look at what I have here. As I said, this is for the made up company Awesome Chocolates. And we got some tables here. You can see that we have the sales table here, which tells me what's happening in the company in 2021. So each row tells us a salesperson sold to the geography of New Zealand a certain product like raspberry chocolate on that date for $8,000. It's kind of like a shipment log, really. It's not sales log. So every day, each of our people send chocolates to multiple parts of the world and spread joy. So that's the detail. And if I want to, for example, know a little bit more about this person, Barfani or Dennison or Carlin, we can go to the other data tab. And from here, I can see that Barfani is part of the Yummy's team. Like that Dennison is Yummy's team. Willone is on Dalish. Likewise, we also have other tables on the product level. So within product level, I can see that milk bars, for example, as a product is of bars category, and it is a large sized product. So I can get that information. Likewise, New Zealand is part of the Asia Pacific region. So we got some supporting tables. And now what we will do is we'll load all of these 4 tables. So 1, 2, 3. And then this is the 4th table. All of them we shall load into Power BI. And then from there we will see what happens. So here you can directly use the import data button because the data is in Excel. But in many business cases, your data might be coming in from a SQL server or a cloud-based data system, or it could be coming from another Power BI data set that someone else is maintaining, or it could be just typed in manually. So whatever may be the case, you could use that. I'm going to just use the import data from Excel because my data is sitting in a spreadsheet. So we will click that. and then we're going to point to the blank data file here and then click OK. So at this point, you will get a navigator screen that shows what is in that spreadsheet. And then here I can just say within this spreadsheet, I want these 4 tables. So we can just check all the 4 items and then directly load them. You also have a transform data button, which is useful if your data is not in the correct way or it needs some cleanup or adjustments. So then you can use the transform data. We will use that in a minute, but for now we'll just load it because it is in a very clear, clean state. So we can get started and then we can come back and see if there is any problems. So you could load it like this and then the screen will flicker a few times. The data will come through and it will be loaded into Power BI. So now we have given it some data and a few different parts of the screen immediately change depending on how your data is, and some of the things get enabled and light up. So this is now a very good time for us to quickly understand what is it that you're seeing on the Power BI screen, given that about 60% of you are completely new to Power BI. So as I said, Power BI is a data analysis software. So there is everything is built so that you could give it data and then you can analyze it. That's the whole purpose. Within the ecosystem of Power BI, there are multiple different software available. So the tool that we were using there is Power BI Desktop. So this is the desktop tool that we are using here. But apart from Power BI Desktop, there is also other tools available within Power BI ecosystem to facilitate the data analysis thing. So when someone says I'm learning Power BI, about 90% of the time they mean that they're learning how to use the desktop software. But as Power BI evolves, there's more tools that you will need to be familiar with. So I'm not going to go into the detail of what else is there for now, because as a data analyst, about 90% of your time will be spent within the desktop software itself. But at the end of the session, I will talk a little bit more about what else is there before and after Power BI on that chain. So that's a little bit. Now, what we will do is we'll go back to the screen and then I'll come back and show my face for another specific thing. But for now, what is on the screen that you're seeing? So I'm just going to use my this thing to zoom so that you can see. So obviously on the top there is a this is all my ribbon area of Power BI. So this is where all my features are available. This is similar to your Excel stuff as well. So we have a home ribbon, insert, modeling, view, help, external tools. Some of these ribbons may not even appear for you depending on how you have set up Power BI. And certain additional ribbons will come and go depending on what else is happening. So if you select certain things, sometimes the external additional ribbons will come and appear here. You will see that later on as we go. And then we have the big area here, this entire white box. This is called the visual view, or I like to call this as canvas view, because this is where anything that you build will be put in there. So right now this is all blank because it's a white canvas and it says here build visuals with your data. So it's telling you that if you build something from your data, this is where the white space is where they will go. Apart from that, there's a few more areas on the right hand side here. So we have a couple of panels. You have filter panel, the visualizations, and then the fields panel. So remember the 4 tables that we loaded, those 4 are sitting here. So my sales table, product, people, and locations, they all come in and sit here. You can kind of click on that arrow and expand it and it will show you the individual items in the table. And these are all the visuals that you can lay them out on the canvas. So you can kind of select, for example, if I want a column chart, I'll click on this and it will add a column chart here for us to play with. So depending on what you are adding, you will be able to then customize that here, as well as if you are running a newer version of Power BI, you can also customize it using that button there. But in older versions, the button is here, so they moved it up there to give it more space. So that's a little bit on this side of the screen. Now let's go to this side. On this side, we got 3 buttons. So this is my canvas view button. So on this button, this is the page that I see, the white page. If I want to really look at how my data is, we can click on that button and I'm able to just browse through the data to see what is loaded and how it is looking at the back end level. And then this is a third button which is useful for modeling the data. So if I want to connect one table with another, this is where I go. Depending on what else you have loaded, there might be 1 or 2 more buttons that will appear here. Normally, we try to build stuff here, but then sometimes we go between these 2 things. Apart from all this, you also have pages here. You can add multiple pages. We will get into that soon. But for now, let's just build stuff. Okay. So before we build, let's see what is getting loaded. So I can go to the data view. I can pick any table and then I can see this. This view is just for your information purpose. You don't really do anything here. For example, if I apply a filter for Jan 1st, 2021 data, I get a filtered view of what records are there, but that's just for my purpose. There is no real value of this filtering activity other than me looking at the data to verify or ensure that things are clear. So normally we don't use this view unless we want to verify what's happening in the back. And you can see that there's 3,300 rows. You could potentially be watching at 1 million rows here, and it doesn't really matter what you're watching. Then you have the model view, which we can use to connect the tables. Now, depending on how you have configured Power BI, it may have connected the tables, it may not have connected the tables. Irrespective of what happened, it doesn't really matter. The 4 tables are all connected to each other because everything is together giving you one set of data, even though there are 4 tables. So for example, here, even I didn't do this myself, the Power BI automatically connected because the column names match. So this line here tells me that salesperson from this table is linked to the salesperson in this table. This is because if I go to my data, I can see that I have a salesperson, and I showed you this in the Excel workbook as well. If I want to know more detail about that person, we went into the people table, and then there I was able to get more data about them. So that is how the relationship is also connected, because the column names match and the column contents match. Power BI took the initiative and it connected them automatically. So this step is called modeling. Many times the modeling is automated because Power BI can do it by itself, but you may have to take deliberate action to model things. So for example, location is not matching because in one table it is called geography, in another table it is called geo. So the column names don't match, so Power BI was not taking the risk of linking them up, but we know that they are the same. So to link them up, you can do it in multiple ways. The easiest and most fun way is click on the geo field, drag and drop it on the geography field here. You can go from here to there or there to here. It doesn't really matter. And when you see the highlighted line, if you let it go, the relationship will be made. The nature of this relationship is called one to many because there is only one record per geography there's only one record for geography in my locations table. But on the sales table, I could have multiple records against that geography. So I know that New Zealand is APAC, and I need to know that only once. So that's why locations table will only have 1 row per New Zealand. But on the sales table, I could be selling to New Zealand hundreds of times. So there's going to be 100 times of New Zealand. So that's why it's called one to many. Just as you have one to many, you could also have many to many, one to one, or many to one. So those are the types of relationships that you have. Time for an obligatory dad joke here. So why can't data modelers marry? because they prefer one-to-many relationships. Well, we'll go back to here and then we will see how the connections are identified. So the connections are all identified through these lines. There is some additional arrows there. It gets a little bit more technical of why the arrow is pointing in this direction and all of that. We'll come back to that if time permits. Otherwise, I'll leave that to you for your own homework and figuring it out. It doesn't matter where you put your tables and how you move them. This is all just for your visual pleasure. Really, the fact that those 4 tables are connected is what matters. How you lay out the diagram has no meaning in all of that. There is one technical term people use for this particular type of diagram where you have a central concept, in this case sales, and many outer concepts, product, location, people. This particular thing is called star schema. This is because we have a central concept. So I'm going to call this as S, and many outer concepts. So I have my P. Boy, it is hard to draw with this. I have my locations. I have my products. I could have other things as well. So if you really squint your eyes and look at this diagram, it looks like a star. Hence the name star schema, because you have one central concept and multiple outer concepts. There is a specific name given to the central concept. This table is called fact. Again, you can call this whatever you want. You can call this table as monkey table and these tables as donkey tables. It doesn't really matter. But the technical terms they use for these things are the central table is called fact and the outer tables are usually called as dimensions. This is because the central table will tell you the facts or the numbers that are happening. But if I want to know a little bit more about those numbers, like, where is this $8,000 coming in from? And then I need to kind of follow the thread to the location to see which location it is coming from, or follow the thread on the people direction to see who is the person bringing that 8,000, or product direction to see which product. So if I want to know the story from a certain dimension, then we go there. So that's why these outer tables are called dimension. The inner table is called fact. I got another video on my channel that kind of goes into a bit more explanation of what these tables are and other jargon. So feel free to check that out later on. But for now, we have modeled the table data. I can see my data. Let's go and build some stuff. MK also sends in a super sticker. Thank you. And I'm seeing kind of like a couple of messages about the video is not clear. Unfortunately, there's nothing I could do at my end. A lot depends on the bandwidth and few other things. I think I have really good quality internet. So this is the highest quality that I could stream at without doing anything else. So that's that. You could, I think this is something that you can also try it yourself. On your YouTube, you will see like a gear icon somewhere on the screen. Just click on that and set the quality to higher, and that will help. I'll probably add an illustration of that in my next live stream, because I think that's a question that people often ask. Okay. So we got our data, we have modeled it. Now let's go and see the analysis. So what I will do is we will define some questions for our analysis. As I said, I got some things written here. There's quite a few things here. So what we will do is we will define first goal. The number one goal is to clean the data. But many times when you are analyzing the data, you may not even know that you don't have you have unclean data. You might think the data is good. Let's go and analyze. But when you analyzing it, then you realize, oh, wait a sec, my data looks like crap. So then you will have to back up and fix the problem. So that's the journey that we will also take. We'll assume that the data is good. So we'll move to the analysis phase. But then as we move there, we might see some problems. Then we'll have to come back and fix them. So the first analysis question that I want to take up is, I want to see how our salespeople are performing. But before let's just do the salesperson analysis. So I want to understand like who is our best salesperson. That's the question that I want to start with, and then we will address that. So Taviti Naidu Kalla sends a super sticker as well. Thank you so much. And there's a couple of questions here. Can we not cardinality one to many as primary key to foreign key? So again, you're using the technical words, primary key and foreign key, which is in a way what our values are. The country name is in the locations table is primary key, and on the sales table it is the foreign key. But you don't need to use those words because as when I asked earlier, about 60% of you are new to Power BI. So I'm assuming you may not even know these terms. So it's not necessary to know them to use them. As long as you're able to establish the relationship and work, that is fine. In most cases, it will be one table will be owning the information, location information. Another table will be using only the identifier there to say which location it is. So this is a question from Abhishek, how to change Snowflake schema to star schema once the modeling is done. You're not really changing anything. You can have anything and you can bring in new tables and add them on, and depending on how it is, it could change from one model to another, or it could become a complex nested model as well. It doesn't matter. There is nothing, no screen buttons you need to click. Power BI will just work with your data in a fluid way. There is nothing that you need to enable to work with different data models. If you have just one table, it works. If you have 5 tables, it works. If you have 50 tables also, it works. But not every data sets are easy to analyze with Power BI. So that is something you will have to take up later on with that. So Marcelo says, how much Power BI should you know to enroll in an entry-level data position? What I recommend to you is, Marcelo, you come, please ask this question at the end. So once we finish, then I think that will be a good point for us to see what else you need to learn to be good. I've starred your comment so that it's visible for me later on to bring it up, but that's that. Okay. So let's go back here. I'm just going to keep my face in the corner. We'll see if this works. Otherwise, I'll completely turn it off. So as I said, we will start with the assumption that the data is clean. So we are going to just load up some report on how our salespeople are doing. And then we will see if there is any data issues. So my people are in the people table. So I could kind of use this table to build my visual. So I can expand this. And then sales table is my sales value. So we'll start with a very, very simple thing, which is I just want to see how much money each of the persons are bringing in. And then we will go into further detail. So you could use any type of visual to visualize this. We'll start with a stacked bar chart because that's the very first one on the visuals list. So we'll put that. When you click on a visual, you will get like a blank box on the screen. You can move this around, you can resize it. Again, this is all fairly obvious and straightforward stuff. So we'll put that there, and I'm gonna just take the salesperson, and we want to see one person per bar. So each bar is one person. So you want to put it into the access value here from the people table. So we'll get that. Still blank because we have not told what is it that we want to see per person. So we need to give a value as well. So that's where the values option comes in here. So within the values, I'm just going to add my amount. So I want to see total amount per salesperson. So we'll put the values here. And then we can kind of see who our people are and how much money they're bringing in. For example, on the top here is Rafaelita. And if I kind of hover my mouse, I can see that Rafaelita has $814,646. So almost $1 million sales made by Rafaelita. Carlin, 800,000. And all the way at bottom is Brian with 651,000. So That's the amounts per person. This is looking good. What I want to do is I want to see it at a team level, not at an individual level. These are all the individual. This is too much detail. And you might think this works, but because we are just scratching the data to understand what's happening, we need to kind of make multiple visuals. So that's good. For the team, I'm just going to use a column chart. Same process again, but this time instead of person, I'm going to take the team and put it on axis. And again, we'll put the amount here and we will see the teams. So we got 4 teams: Yummies, Delish, Juices, and Blank. Now that looks suspicious. You may not be running the Awesome Chocolates company, but I run the Awesome Chocolates company. And I know for a fact that there is no blank team. We only have 3 teams. So where is this 4th team coming from? So I got curious and then I say, okay, let's select the blank. And then you can quickly see these are the people who are part of the blank team. There are 2 things that you will notice if this is the first time you're using Power BI at this point. The first one is it is interactive, which means you click on an item on a visual, then all other visuals will automatically highlight or filter. So in this case, I picked my blank team and I can instantly see that these are the people who are part of the blank team, Delish or Yummies. So it is all interactive, like everything is talking to each other. So this is a default feature. You don't need to click anything. You don't need to turn on anything. Right out of the box, everything is interactive. So if you made similar graphs in Excel or any other tool, chances are you may not have that kind of interactivity. Of course, certain tools like Tableau have that, but not Excel. So because chances are most of you are coming from a traditional Excel background, this is kind of like a groundbreaking thing. So that's one thing that we notice. But the second thing is, because things are interactive, we don't need to make so many different graphs. We can make 2 graphs, and between those 2, there could be like 40 different interaction combinations. So with just 2 graphs alone, you're able to produce a lot more insight than having 10 different graphs. So the way you need to think about Power BI based reports is, because things are interactive, you need to see how little you can show and then let user figure out what is happening on their own by playing with data. Whereas in a more traditional software like Excel or a PDF report that you're printing, you will have to figure out all the combinations yourself because there is no way for them to interact with that. Whereas here there is interaction, so your mindset need to change as well. Anyhow, the bigger problem is blank. So let's go and solve that. I just want to give a shout out to Bharat as well. Thanks, Bharat. And let's see if there is any other questions. So Veeranala Prashant says, if we want to add data without relationship with present data, how should I add that kind of data? You can add anything and then keep it there without having a relationship. Certain types of things will work, certain types of things won't work, but it is all possible. You can do it. It goes a little out of scope for now, but maybe hopefully we'll come back to that as part of the journey. So you can do it. And okay, so now that we notice blank, I'm thinking, what's going on? So I can go here and look at my people table, and then I see that within the team, I have got a couple of blank values. So the team is not available all the way through. So this is why when the value is missing here, I'm seeing it as blank. And then I, as a data analyst, normally in real life, what happens is when you see this, you immediately call up your product manager or team manager or whatever. So I made some calls internally to find out what's going on. Turned out that when they were loading the data to the Excel file, there is some problem with our system. So and the new team that got created, it is coming up as blank. We just made a reorg and we kind of split some people to new team, but somehow that got lost in the transition and it was not showing through here. So the suggestion came back to us as, if you see blank, you just put them into the new team. That's the suggestion. So from a reporting level, we need to kind of massage the data and add this new team. So that's a data cleanup activity. So we now, from analysis, we go back one step, clean up the data, and then come back. So to clean the data, you use the transform data button here. You can just directly click on it. You can also, if there is a problem with a specific table, you can right click and then edit query there. But this is much easier. So I just click on transform data, and this will take us to a completely different screen through which I can clean my data. So I'm just going to do that, and I'll go to my people table. Here I see that blank values appear as null. This particular screen and this entire feature is called Power Query. So through this, we are now able to kind of tell Power BI how we want our data to be pre-processed. Okay. So at this time, it's a very good idea for us to get into a little bit of sketching. So I'm just gonna switch to my face and then get my trusty notepad and do a quick diagram of what is Power BI at a very high level from a technical perspective. So far we are thinking Power BI as one big box. That's really how we are approaching Power BI. So Power BI. But Power BI internally is not one big box. It is actually broken into 3 distinct, clear, different software, each capable of doing one specific task very well. But everything is packaged nicely together as one software. So when people say they're learning or using Power BI, outside people generally think they're just using everything in one go. But internally, as a person who is working within Power BI, you could be working within one of the layers of the Power BI to do the stuff. So the 3 layers are aligned with your life as a data analyst as well. So to analyze the data, you must start your journey from the data. So let's say you have some data here. This is my Awesome Chocolates dataset database. The data comes in and we want some fancy report here. That's the output. But the journey is not like straightforward. You can't just dump the data and get the details out. The very first step is getting the data and, if needed, cleaning up the data. So we could think of the first layer as data layer. That's the first layer. And then we could also obviously think of the last layer as the output layer. Okay. So we have a data layer and then a output layer, which is for my graphs. So we load the data and then we do something and then we get the output. So that something could be calculating stuff like, adding up numbers or averaging or calculating differences or whatever. So calculation. So that's the journey that we take as a data analyst. We take the data, we load it up, or we change it if needed. We calculate stuff. We then make some outputs, share it. So there's 3 different software, each running one layer of that. The first software is called Power Query, which is for cleaning up and managing the data. The second software is called Power Pivot, which is for doing the calculation stuff. And the third software is nothing but your visual layer. So this is the only one that we actually see on the screen. Technically, you can see all the other 3 as well, other 2 as well, but this is the main one that people see all the time. So we could kind of refer to this as visual or Power BI itself. And that's the third layer. But internally, there's 2 other software available, Power Query and Power Pivot, each having its own specialty. Power Query is for managing the data side of things and cleaning it up and changing the data. Power Pivot is for doing the calculation. So when you say you are learning Power BI or using Power BI, you by default are expected to have good competency and skill on all the 3 levels. So this is why I feel like Power BI is very easy to get into, but once you start using it for serious stuff, you need to actually widen your skills and get into different areas. This is also the reason why, as you get more into Power BI, you might decide to go and specialize in a specific area of Power BI instead of learning everything, because that's just not possible, because the skills and and the concepts and the type of mindset you need for each layer is completely different. Anyhow, we will go through the whole cycle now. So we are here within the Power Query layer, the very first layer of the Power BI. And I see that there is null values here. What I want is I just want to put them into the new team. So I can right click on the team and then I can say replace values. And then the replace value, the value we want to find is null in small letters. And then replace this with new team. We can give this new team any name. We haven't heard the official name yet, so I'm just going to call them as a new team, but feel free to write something creative here. And then click OK. You might think you have done something manual at this time, like manually setting that value as a new team. But reality is we are doing a rule on the data. So whenever data comes, if there is a blank value in the team, the person will be moved to new team automatically. So that's the rule that we are adding on top of the data. Okay, so that's the team. While we are here, let's go and clean up the data on the other things as well. If I go to the sales table, you'll see that the geography has inconsistent spacing. You may have already noticed this. If not, it's time to notice that. There is some extra white space coming in because when we extract this data from our vendor system or our SAP or our Salesforce or whatever it is that we are using, somehow that extra space is coming. So this is a problem for us. We don't need that extra space. We just want the country as it is. So I can right click on the geography. I can say transform, and then I can use the trim option to remove those extra spaces. So you could use Power Query for simple stuff like this, like cleaning up spaces or removing things. Or you could use it for fairly complicated, elaborate steps that you need to take on the data. In a way, Power Query is like similar to SQL. SQL we use to talk to a database, get the data in the way and format and the criteria that we want. So we could use Power Query for that, but Power Query offers much more flexibility and ease of use from a data analyst perspective. So again, I'm not going to go into the differences between these two right now, but I just want to plant that idea, especially if you have some SQL background. So we did two things. We cleaned up the location, we cleaned up the geography, and then we cleaned up the people tables. If you want, you can add more here, but for now, I feel very happy with the way things are. So I'm just going to close and load that screen, and it will come back with updated data here, and you can quickly see that the new team is now added and it is available for me. So there's no blank team anymore. It is new team. Everything is automatically done, but if you want, you can also trigger the refresh through the refresh button. So now we are able to see the amount by salesperson and the team as two separate graphs. We are not noticing anything funny, and that is good. Okay, let's just see what questions you have. At this point, if you have any questions, feel free to post them. I've been looking at the questions on and off anyway, but now that we have reached a point where we kind of used a little bit of Power Query and a little bit of Power BI, you might have some questions. So post them there. I'll read through. So Suresh asks, what is the difference between creating a relationship and using the merge feature in Power Query editor? So we did the first part. We didn't really talk about the merge feature within Power Query. So if you're not familiar with that, you can ignore what I'm saying now. But the difference between these two is if I merge within Power Query, then I take two tables, let's say I merge them into one table, then that is the only table that I'm getting here. Okay, so in the model view, once the merging is done, I just get that merged final table into the model. Whereas with the relationship option, I get to keep both tables. So depending on what you're doing, sometimes you may want to have both tables. Sometimes you just need one table. So you will pick and choose. Let's go back to this diagram here, which is very, very helpful. It's kind of like a doodle only, but it's super helpful to think about this in this direction. So 3 layers, there is an inherent, again this is not spelled out anywhere on the screen, but internally this is happening all the time, is that your data is pushed from one layer to another. So in a layer you get to see only what is pushed to that point. So outside is your SQL server or Excel files or an Azure cloud based system or whatever may be the case. Only the bits that you select will be available within Power Query. And within Power Query, let's say you merge or you combine or you do whatever, then only whatever is pushed out of Power Query is available to Power Pivot or the calculation layer. So within Power Query, if I changed my location to, if I changed my team to new team, then I no longer have access to the blank team here. I only have access to the new team. So the data is going from here to there, then it automatically only that bit is available. And within here, if I model, then only the modeled bits are kind of available for me to do the reporting. So your data goes in a steps. So whatever you do in a earlier layer, that will have impact on the subsequent layers. This also means as a person who is using Power BI, when you make a choice of doing something in Power Query versus Power Pivot versus on the visual layer, at each place, because once you make a decision at an earlier layer, it is going to impact all the subsequent layers. So if I take the 2 tables and combine them to make 1 table, then I will not be able to use the second table anymore further down in my report. So you need to think about that when you make those choices. Okay, next question. So Sahir says, where is the data stored? It's a bit more technical than the way we are approaching here. Power BI offers different ways of storing data. In this particular example, where we are bringing in the data from Excel workbook, the data is owned by the Excel file. So if you change the data in the Excel file, Power BI will be changed as well, your outputs and calculations and everything. But once you connect the Power BI to Excel and then bring the data, a copy of the data is maintained within the Power BI file itself. So it's kind of like this and that are connected, but they're connected in a very loose fashion. So the connection is not live. Imagine this is your Excel file and this is your Power BI file. When you load, a copy of the data goes and sits here. And then when you refresh again, another copy comes and sits here. So that's a very, very loose way of thinking. This is not always possible or advisable when you have, let's say, 1 billion rows of data. So that's why Power BI offers different types of connection modes. So what we have is kind of a load mechanism. Then you can also customize that. You can read up more, all of that. All right. ANSI says, is there any restriction on the number of tables to bring into the model? Technically, not really. I think the restriction is more limited by how much memory your computer has and how much processing power your computer has and how big your data is and all of that. That said, you would want to bring only the necessary bits into Power BI. Let's say you have a database that has 300 tables, but you just need to analyze 2 of them. Only bring those 2. Don't bring all the 300 here. Because you're just going to clog up everything and make your life miserable by doing that. So Scott asks, how did you change the blanks to new team? So what I did is I went to the transform query and then from here located the people table. That's that. And then within this, right click on the team and then say replace values, and I replaced the null values with the new team. So that's the rule that we did. You could do it in any number of ways. You can even go all the way back to your Excel file, change it there, and it will impact here as well. Okay, so at a very basic level, we clean the data. We now looking at this. So now let's go and ask another question and then understand a little bit more. if I'm seeing here, what we have done is we are just calculating the amount per person, but you might want to take a little bit more control of how the calculation is happening, because what we did is we just put the amount here and Power BI did its own calculation and then it automatically summed up the values. To begin with, let's just put two challenges here. Number one, I want to see the amount in dollars. So these are dollar values. So I would rather see $1 million rather than a big number like 814268. So the formatting is not ideal. I want to change that. That's number one requirement. And the second requirement is I don't want to call this as amount. I want to call this as total sales or something else like that. So how do I change all of this? This is where Power BI offers a second layer. So you see the second layer, the Power Query is where we cleaned up the data. The calculation layer is where we are going to get now and take control of the way things are done. You don't need to do all of these all the time, but if you use all the levers in the machine, then you are able to get more out of it. So the second layer is the Power Pivot, and we can just use the amount as it is, or you can create your own calculations. So that's what we shall do. You can use the new measure button on the screen or right click on the table and then say new measure. Irrespective of which way you go, the endpoint is same. So we'll create a new measure. Think of measure as a tiny calculation attached to the table. So this is my measure, and this measure we are going to name this as total amount, and this is equal to the sum of the amount column in my sales table. So sum of sales amount, like that. The very simple math formula. You can kind of connect this with formulas like this in Excel or programming languages or whatever. Again, the notation is also very straightforward. You use table name, column name notation. So table is sales, column is amount, and I just want to sum it up. So that's that. I am making it much more simpler than what it actually is, but that's how you get started. Then things get more complicated as we go along. So we create a total amount, and then you click the tick mark and it gets added to your model. Okay, so now if you see in the sales table, there is a total amount calculation available to you. This is a tiny little calculator attached to the sales table, and you can use that as part of your visuals. So you can see how the total amount looks for a salesperson or location, a product or a category or whatever may be the case, and that will be available to you. So that's total amount. While we are there, while we are editing it, I can also set the formatting. So I'm just going to click on the dollar and set it to 0 decimals. We don't need decimal points. We can just round it up. And that's my total amount. So now let's go and add a new page here. I'm just going to show that. So I added another page, page 2. We have page 1, which is just made up with these graphs. Page 2 is where we will use our total amount to see. So here we'll put a column chart, and then this column chart, what we will do is we'll see by location. So we'll put geography on the axis and total amount like this. So notice the difference between this graph and Control C, Control V. So if I copy paste that to visual, you can see they both are showing the total amount, but this one is saying amount by team, whereas this one says total amount by geo. So because we named the measure as total amount, that is what it will be called. And notice the axis as well. It has my dollar formatting, whereas here it is just shown as one big number. So if you are thinking, that's not super interesting, just for the sake of different name and dollar value or whatever, why would I need to create this? It was already working for me. Well, that is just the tip of the iceberg. The actual technology that we use it for creating this total amount, this is called DAX, or data analysis expressions. So it is a programming language through which I can communicate to the Power Pivot layer of my Power BI and then talk to it, get what I want. So I can use this to calculate all sorts of interesting, weird, and useful numbers out of my data. Okay, so think of it in a very loose way, like how you have in Excel your data, and if there is no formulas available for you, you will not be able to get far. You can use auto sum or subtotal or something, or the status bar numbers, but you can't get really far. Whereas with formulas, we are now able to talk to our data and do so many more awesome things. Same way with DAX here. Using DAX, I can talk to my data and I can get so many more useful and interesting numbers out of our data. So we will use the DAX to figure out two more things, and then I'll see what questions you have. But I will give you some pointers on where to learn, because as I said, both Power Query and Power Pivot are deeply technical pieces of software that has quite a bit of awesome things going on there. So I could be literally talking for the next 3 days about either one of these, and we will still not be done. So we'll keep it tight here, but there's going to be more for you to learn depending on which way you're going at the end of this. So total amount we have created. We're now gonna create few more things. Just as we have total amount, we'll create, let's say, total boxes. So right click, new measure, and then total boxes. Those of you who are following along, feel free to write this measure yourself. So sum of boxes, you don't need to type everything. If you start typing the words, auto suggest will show you, and you can just press tab to fill this. So we get total boxes. So I have two values attached to my model, total amount and total boxes. You might think, where do these numbers really live? Are they physically there somewhere, or they're not there? Because if I go to the data view into my sales table, I don't see any extra columns added here, total amount or total boxes. So these are not really living on your, these extra things that you're building, they're not living anywhere. They are just attached as a calculator or a calculation behavior on top of your data. Okay, and they will only get triggered and they will only run when you put them on a visual. Okay, so if I don't have any visuals, like here I'm just reading my data, then none of these total amount, total boxes are calculated. They just live there in the memory as a definition. But the moment I put a graph, for that context, for that situation, the numbers get calculated. So this is all the internal magic, and the internal working of this is handled by the Power Pivot engine. And that is where sometimes people who are learning these things for the very first few times, or coming from another background, they'll find it a bit nebulous or confusing, like, how is it working? Where is it working? Because the biggest challenge, at least for me, who had quite a bit of Excel knowledge before I started learning Power Pivot and Power BI, is in Excel, we are used to seeing this instant feedback for everything. I write a sum formula, I see the result immediately. I write a VLOOKUP, I see the result immediately. So when I go from that to here, here I'm writing something, but I don't see the result until I put it for a visual. For that visual, the number gets calculated, but otherwise it's not there. So it was very tricky for me to understand and appreciate and connect the dots when I'm doing it like this. And it took me quite a bit of time, actually few years, to really understand where these things are fitting in. But many of you are learning now for the first time. So my suggestion to you is, if you are coming from an Excel background and you have done some formula work in Excel, then don't compare that with Power Pivot. Excel and Power BI are two different things. They happen to share the same syntax. So if you look at your total amount, it does look like an Excel formula, but it's not an Excel formula. It just happens to look like one. So don't compare these two. Think of this as a brand new thing altogether, and then learn it like that instead of drawing parallels to Excel. So that way you will not have any headache or any confusion when you're learning this. You're just thinking it as a calculation that is attached there, and it will only run when you put it on the screen. For that context, the value will run. Okay, we will not go into further detail for that. But let's just see if there is any interesting questions or comments coming in. So Jennifer says, so you can only edit the features of the calculations. You have to create a new measure. You couldn't edit the original total. In a way, you could. So the way it works is, if you don't create anything and you just put the amount on the graph, Power Pivot will, technically Power Pivot and Power BI together, they will figure out a way to calculate stuff for you and then just show. And if you don't like the way it is displayed, you could use other options to edit the things, like change the chart title or display formatting and show the dollar and all of that. But those were the excuses to get into this. But the real reason why you want to use Power Pivot and the measures component is because it will give you so much more flexibility and power to work with your data. Imagine you could only sum or average or count, then you wouldn't really get everything out of your data. So that's where the limitation of the original values is. And that's why even though you can edit, it's kind of like not really that valuable in my opinion. So Meghna says, what is the difference between new measure and quick measure? So new measure means you are taking control. You will type the whole formula yourself, but sometimes you just want to create certain things and there is a predefined business rule or pattern for that. So quick measure will give you some predefined measures that you can say, I want to see this, and then Power BI will write the code for you. It hasn't really evolved much since the last few years when they launched it. So I seldom use quick measure option. I try to write new measures because some of the things in there are kind of useful, but I almost never have to use that because I would rather write my own thing. And P. Johnson says, could you create a new measure based on another measure that is already calculated? This is a very powerful and interesting question, and this is what will take you from where we are right now to the next level within Power Pivot. So think of the Power Pivot as multiple steps. So we are on step 1, created simple measures. We'll now see what happens when you combine the things. So that was really my next thing anyway. So we got total amount, total boxes. I can now create the third measure, which is amount per box. Okay. And then I can analyze the performance by which countries are bringing in more dollars per box that we ship, or which products are giving us more dollar per box, and all of that. So right click, new measure. And now we will create a composite measure. We don't need to call it composite measure. It's still a measure, which is amount per box. And this is nothing but a calculation of total amount divided by total boxes. But because we've already defined those two measures, we can simply open the square bracket, total amount, divide sign, total boxes. So you can reuse measures like this and add it. We'll set it to dollar with, let's just say 1 decimal point. And so this is my total amount. But now I'm going to set up a table visuals. We have done a few columns and bars, so we'll try something else. In this table visual, I can say per salesperson, how much is the amount per box. So we are able to calculate a completely different picture from the data. You don't need to calculate both of the internal numbers. They will be calculated automatically by Power Pivot, and then it'll do its own thing and then figure out what is the answer here, and then it'll show that there. So, and then I can apply a sort order on this so that we can see that, for example, Van, Tuxwell and Willone are having some of the highest amount per boxes. And at the very low end, we have Carlin, $16. So between 19 to 16 is our range. So that's the second concept. You can create measures and then you can combine measures. Now imagine how much time you can save by combining. You don't have to repeat the business logic of sum of boxes in the table. That logic you don't have to repeat. You just define it once and then you can use that definition elsewhere to build more complex nested logic. So this opens doors for many, many powerful things without you doing a lot of extra calculation work. And all of this is internally happens through the Power Pivot engine. Jobin says, can we delete the columns once we create the measures? Unfortunately not. The measure is not really living anywhere. It is just a definition. Only when the data is there, it can get calculated. So you might be tempted to think, oh, now that I have calculated total amount, why do I need the amount column? If you delete it, then this will not exist by definition. What you may want to do is, if you don't want to see this value here, you just want to use this all the time and don't want to see that, you can go to your model view and then select the table and right click on the amount and then say hide from the report view. What this will do is it will kind of hide the field in this layer. So in this layer, I don't see the amount column itself. So I'm not even encouraged to use it. The only way I can get the amount here is by using the total amount. But that amount column is still there in the table. So this is normally what most people do once they finish data modeling and connect the tables and create all the measures. They'll hide away the original columns so that you're not accidentally using them. So that's sorry, I'm just reading some of these questions. Holly says, can we see the amount per box function again? So this is it is there. Amount per box. And Ishwarya says, why is the total specified as $17 in the table? So this is the total value here. That's a very good question. So time for us to zoom in a bit. And so if you see individual people amount per box, you might think, oh, that makes sense. But why is the total 17? Why is it not the sum of all these boxes? This is because at every point, the number is calculated for that value. So the total is not really the total of all of these. The total simply means at an overall level, if I'm not looking at any individual, at an overall level, then our amount per box is $17. So the calculation is true at each point, even for the total. So that's how the calculations are done. Whereas again, if you're coming from another software such as Excel, you might be used to seeing total as the sum of these individual values. But that makes no sense, right? The total is not $900 per box. It is $17 per box, because if I, at a total level, if I'm not looking at any individual salesperson, then my total amount per box is total sales or total amount divided by total boxes at the overall level. So that's how that works. There's quite a few discussions happening. I think people are talking among themselves as well. So sometimes I'm not even sure if this is something that I should chip in or let you guys figure it out. Okay, so maybe I will come back to more questions, but feel free to post them. I'll keep scrolling through every now and then. But the amount per box is the kind of like a composite thing that takes two simple concepts and then lays one on top of another to create this. Okay, so we'll do two more of these things and then we will then use them to build some sort of a report or a page. So the second thing that I want to do is If I go back here, we were using salesperson to see how much they brought in. So I want to create a page where I can kind of get more into the salesperson's performance. So I'll create a page. I keep forgetting that my face is in that corner. So I'll add a new page. Maybe I'll start from scratch. So we click on this plus button, add a page, and if you double click, you can type a name as well. This is helpful when you publish this. The page will have its own name. So I'm going to call this page as salesperson performance, and that'll come up there. And then now here we are going to build a kind of like a report to understand what's happening to our salespeople. So now we are moving away from that kind of ad hoc play with data to see what's happening mindset to let's build a report so that someone else can read this and understand what is happening. So it's not for yourself, it's for someone else. So naturally you want to set a nice context and everything. And this is where we will try to use a few of the things that are there on the screen. So I want to put a clean title on the top. So I'm going to click on my text box, and here I can type any free text that I want. So we'll say salesperson report. And then you can just resize it or move it around like the way you want. And needless to say, you can also make this nice and big, apply bold formatting, whatever you want. You can even change the colors and everything. Okay. So that's that. You could also go to the insert and add some images. So if you want to bring in your corporate logos or some shapes or whatever else, you could do that. This is all trivial, so I'm not going to go into the too much of that. Here, what I want to show is I want to show our top 10 salespeople by the amount of sales they're bringing in. And because it's kind of like a top 10 thing, instead of any graph, a table would work very well. So we'll build a table. So I'll add a table and I'm gonna make it nice and big like this. And within this table, I want to show the name of the person and the amount. So we go to the people and then take the salesperson, add it to the values. We'll get one per person and automatically they're adjusted in alphabetical order. And then I can add total amount and let's just add amount per box as well. So we'll see all of these. First up, we don't need to see everybody. We just want to see the top 10 people. This is all of our team. We don't want everyone. So we'll select this table, and using the filter panel here, you can now set a filter criteria to limit the data that is going to that visual. So here the visual is getting all the data, but we don't want all the data to go to that visual. We just want the top 10 people. So the top 10 is on the person level. So where it says salesperson is all, I'll set this filter and then I'll zoom the screen. So in case you want to see, so you want to expand and you can kind of use the basic filtering. For example, I just want to see the ABC people, Andrea, Bar. So these people, I can just kind of select them and then I'm only looking at those people. I'm not looking at everybody. So this is one kind of filtering. It's called basic filtering, where you're just setting the filter based on your criteria. We don't want basic filtering. We want to filter the top 10 people. So from basic filtering, I'll change this to top N. And then you can say top 10 items based on what? So the top 10 based on the total amount. So here, add data fields. You just put your total amount. So you build the criteria like this, top N, top 10 total amount. So instead of top, you could also select bottom and then change the number as well. And when you apply the filter, you're now really looking only at your top 10 performers and their total values. Okay, so that's that. The second thing that we want to do is we want to make everything nice and big. Because there's only 10 people, the text is too tiny for my screen. So I want to make everything big, as well as remove the total row. That's incorrect anyway, because we are only summing up 10 people. So we'll select this again, go to the format, the visual thing, depending on which version of Excel, Power BI you have and whether you have enabled or disabled certain features. This particular aspect could be there or it could be further down here. Irrespective of where it is, you click on that little paintbrush thingy And from here you can format. I want to just take the totals and off them. Total row is gone. And now we can kind of use these other aspects to format. There is some predefined styles as well. So for example, I could use a flashy rows kind of things. I'm not a huge fan of some of these things because they tend to look a little bit meh than interesting, but maybe it will change over time. So I can go to the grid and few other places. This is getting a little bit too much clicky. So what you could go is you can use the search button and then type what you want. So I want to say change the font size. So global font size, it says 8 points. Let's make this 16 points. So now everything is good. And then let's just search for padding. Padding means how much gap is there between each row. And then I'm gonna make it 4 pixels. So there's a bit of white space and everything is spaced out. And like that, you can use the search to quickly go and find what you want. You can also add some background color on the column header. So let's make it nice and blue. And the text, we will make it white color so that it looks like that. So you can use the formatting options to change the way things look. For every type of visual, depending on what is there on that visual, you can have multiple types of formatting adjustments. So these are our top 10 people. If I sort them, I'll see the values also. Let's make this a bit more visual. But before that, I'm just going to see what questions are there. So I think Ansi asks a follow-up question regarding the question on total. So we do not get total at all. Is it always the average value? I hope this is answered based on what I was showing just now. Sometimes the total is total. Sometimes it is not average. It is the correct calculation of the measure at that value. So this is where it is somewhat more technical than the plain English version of what I'm saying. And I don't want to get into that detail right now. But I have got another live stream that I did last year on Power Pivot, the calculation part. So I recommend checking that out later on for more detail. And Jennifer says, how do we show them in ascending or descending? So that's what we did. We sorted by total amount. So now they are in the descending order. Dip says, can you explain the difference between the amount which was in the raw Excel data and the total amount which is created here? So the amount in the raw Excel file will be for everybody, for all the regions and everything. Whereas the total amount for the top 10 people here would be just for those 10 people, because this particular box, you could think of it like this. The Power BI itself is getting all the data, but that little box there, this box here, is only getting just the top 10 people data for the total amount. So the amount of data that is visible to that box is less. So hence the total row here would be different from what the total will be here or somewhere else. And then Sandra says, can you export the tables to Excel? So this is kind of going back in a full circle. We start from Excel, make something here, and then take these things back to Excel. You can do that. You can just select this, click on the dot, 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 and then you have some options to export the data. Show as table. So if I just, it's already a table, so show as table is not relevant, but you can export the data and then that'll give you a CSV of that table with the calculations, and then you can use that for that. You can also you can't really just copy paste things because this doesn't exist outside of Power BI, but you could do kind of like a screenshot or copy paste as image or something else in your presentations if you want. Okay. So I'll come back to more questions in a few minutes, but I just want to finish few more things here before I lose my train of thought, which is we're looking at salespeople, total amount, and amount per box. And I want to make it a little bit more visual and kind of popping and grabbing the attention. So one thing that we could do is we could add a little bit of more graph aspect to here. So this is where I want to add a bar in the value to show how big the value is. So we could use conditional formatting feature of Power BI. So there's many features and many of them are not immediately visible or obvious. So that's why I thought I'll showcase some of them, not all. So you can click on that little arrow, and from here you can add a conditional formatting. So I'm just going to add a data bar. And for now, I'm not even going to touch anything. I'll just say OK. And you'll get a default data bar of blue color that has the highest value for the top row and then kind of goes down. If you think this is not helpful or it's not adding value or it's not too useful, you can tweak it. So for example, one big problem that I see immediately is it is sitting on top of my data, so it's not really working for me. So what I could do is I could go to conditional formatting data bar, and from here maybe tweak the color. So I'm just gonna change this to a dull color like that. We'll see if that works. Otherwise we will have to come back and do something else. So that's probably a little better because now the values are contrasted. But if you want, you can also change the maximum. So maximum is highest value, which means for the biggest value, the bar will be 100% of the column. But maybe if I just want to fit it by 50%. So instead of that, I'm just going to type a custom value here of maybe 1.2 million, depending on how our data is. And this will kind of adjust everything further down. There's other ways as well, but just a few things that I thought, when you see them, you can then start thinking, oh, this is how I can use it, or this is where I can take it from here on. So that's number one. The second thing that we could do is if we go to the data and look at people, apart from their name and team, we also have their profile picture as a URL for us. So it would be nice if I can show their picture on the report so that it becomes much more human rather than just the name. I can show a picture of Rafaelita or Carlin or Dottie, and that'll make it more meaningful. So we could take the people picture and then put it right next to the salesperson. By default, it will simply show that picture URL instead of the actual picture itself. But at this point, we know that that's not the URL that I want. I want to see their face. So I can go here, click on my picture column, and Power BI doesn't know anything about your data. So it assumes that your data is a number or a text. But certain things are not number or text. They could be other things as well. So here, this is actually an image. So we select the column, go to column tools ribbon, and from data category here, so this thing here, data category, you want to set this to image URL. Okay, this is a one-time step. You do it, and then every time that column is used in the report, it will be treated as an image. So now we'll get their images instead of their names alone, and that will add a little bit more pop or a little bit more humanity to the report, I guess, and it makes them more interesting and personal. And you could use this for your team values or your product logos or your locations or whatever else. Any pictures will work. The current limitation with this is the picture needs to be on the open web, so the URL needs to be reachable from your computer. But there are other techniques to get images from your Active Directory and things like that. So I leave that out for you to figure it out. If you think the image is good but it's not good at that place, you can also take the picture and move it to the front. And if you want, you can go to here and search for size. think it's height. Yeah, image height attribute is there, and I can adjust this. So I'm going to make it 40 pixels so that the image is there, but it's not too big, because if it's too big, then we are not able to fit all the 10 people there. And that's another way to add a little bit more. I've got all the data there, so that we could see that. So that's the image thing. Shripad asks, how many sessions will be conducted under this masterclass? This is the only session at the end of this. It's end of this topic for me. Can we create a total box sales within Power Query using the new measure column? Not sure why you want to create that in Power Query, because that's not going to be helpful. The measures are always created within Power Pivot, not in Power Query. So and she says, what is the automatically find clusters in the more options? Give it a try. It's a little bit more out there for me to get in, and this data is kind of randomly made up, but you can try it, and then it'll see if there is any particular combinations in your data that are interesting. It'll identify and tell them to you. So MDEF asks, if I want a larger image but my report doesn't fit it on the page without scrolling, is it possible to export a PDF and still include all the data? To be honest, I've not done the export to PDF thing much. I'm just going to try it for the sake of it, just to see what comes in the PDF. So I'll just set the image height to be like that. So this is quite a big thing. And turn off my face. So we're gonna do two things now, which is first how to save the file. So I'll save this and demo Power BI. So we save the file, it gets saved on your computer. I'll talk a bit more about how to publish this in a minute, but for now we're gonna export to PDF. And I think it is exporting each page. I believe it will only export what is visible. So hopefully you can see this here. Yeah, so there's no scroll bar option. Whatever is visible, only that much is exported. And that's what I guessed as well. So if you want to have a larger, like a big page report, you must have all of that visible here. Only then it comes through there into your PDF. So that's, I think, a limitation of how the PDF thing works. So let's just set it back to 40 pixels. And okay, hide the comment. So we created a salesperson's report. It kind of shows us what is happening at a table level. If I want to see how an individual is doing at an overall category level or a geography level, I can add some additional graphs. So for example, I'm just going to add a column chart here that tells me if I pick a person, I want to see their breakdown by category. So I can put category onto axis and then total amount into the values. So this is at an overall level how they are doing. Everybody, not just the 10 people, but all the people. Like these values are for everybody. Because remember, only this visual has the top 10 filter. This one doesn't. So it is for everyone. But if I now pick Carlin, then I can see this is the values for Carlin. So as I select, I'm only seeing their portion highlighted. And because it is tiny compared to our overall sales, the visibility is not good. So I'm thinking, this is good, but why can't I see only Gigi's portion there? Not the highlighted bit, but if I pick on Gigi, then I just want to see their entire graph, not the highlighted one. So to do that, you need to customize the interaction. The concept is called interactions because you click on something, something else gets highlighted. So that's called interaction. And the default interaction behavior is kind of automatically decided by Power BI, but you can tweak it. So what we want is when I click on this, I want this visual to not highlight but filter. So you must pick the first visual and then go to format, and from here edit the interactions. And when you do this, what happens is for the selected visuals, the interactions will be highlighted on all other visuals, including any text boxes that you have. So what we want to do is for this, I want this to, currently it is highlighting. I want to change the interaction to filter type of interaction. So there's three kinds of interactions you could do. You can highlight, you can filter, or you can have no interaction at all. That means nothing happens when you click on the first one. So you can choose between any three. So I'm going to change this from highlight to filter. And once this is done, we've customized it. We can turn off the edit interactions. And now if I pick on Gigi, I'll see just Gigi's portion here. Dotty, Jehu. And if I unclick on them by clicking away, then I'll see everybody's value. So this is how you can make a report where you're showing full picture or selected values depending on what is clicked by customizing the interactions. There is more to the custom interactions bit, and you can kind of tweak this for any combinations and create some really powerful and insightful reports. I want to talk a bit more, but I'm mindful about the time. We are already around 2-hour mark. So instead, I just want to quickly jump here to talk briefly about the other file that was available in the video description for you to download, and kind of show you that we got pretty much there through our journey. So this is the file that I gave you at the start, and this is where we are now. So it was kind of there. There's extra bit that I've added here about targets. And I really wanted to talk about a little bit about the forecasting and other things, but I probably don't have time for that. So we'll do that maybe next month or the month after when I do another class. But for now, we are at a very good solid point where you know how things work and how everything is connected. Within this file, there is a few more Easter eggs for you. You can figure out how the target thing is done. There's a couple more measures added here. So that could be interesting. And here we calculated sales per customer instead of amount per box, but similar thing, again, useful. And it uses the same concept like that interaction customization. So I'll see their category and geography sales. So two graphs, both filtering down. But there is another Easter egg on when I pick a person, I can see their name on the box here as well. And if I don't pick anyone, I'll see all. So you might be able to figure these things out by looking at the measures in that sample file. The file will be there in the description. And when I finish the live stream, stretch my legs and take another nap, I'll come back and I'll add a link to this file as well. But I want to conclude by talking about two more things. So let me quickly see what questions are there. And if there is no other questions, then I'll go and add the final bits on how to publish this and how to learn more Power BI, which is probably what you might be thinking at this point. So Gokul says, is it possible to navigate to another page from a click on a value in a table chart? Yes, you can do that. Those are called, technically, they're not technically bookmarks, but you can do it using bookmarks and actions. I'll show you the simple one, but you can take it further. So we got salesperson performance here, and this is my, I'm just going to hide your comment for now. So we got page 1, page 2, page 3. I'm going to double click and name this page. We could leave it as page 1, but having it a name will really help. So we'll just say ad hoc analysis for now. So I've got 3 pages, and from here I want to jump to ad hoc analysis. So I can insert a button. So I'm just gonna add a a bookmark button, and it'll usually go and sit somewhere, but we'll just put it here. And then you can see that there is an action option here. You can go here, action, and from bookmark we'll just change to page navigation, and then you just pick the page that you want. So ad hoc analysis, and now this becomes a clickable thing. Within Power BI desktop you must do it with control click, but when you publish it becomes just a click. So click, you're going here, and then you can have a bookmark here that will bring you back. You can attach this to a bookmark, you can attach it to a shape, you can attach it to an image or whatever you want. So Samuel asks, is there any way to log into Power BI if I don't have a school or work account? I did briefly talk about this early on. Microsoft used to have a straightforward process to create a not a trial or some sort of weird account for Power BI that is free and you can use it to understand and work with Power BI. They seem to have made it a bit more complicated now. So I could be wrong here, but my suggestion is you can sign up for a free trial of Power BI, and then you can go through the screens. At some point it'll ask you, do you have a work account? If not, then it'll create a free on Microsoft account for you, and then just make a workspace and everything. And then at the end of free trial period, just cancel your payment and then you can continue to use it. Yeah, that's probably the easier way. There's some articles online that you can search up and read on how to make the free trial account. So that's probably what you want to look for. And Babu asks, please explain how time intelligence work and tell Python in Power BI. You're asking pretty much things that will take like 6 hours each to talk. And it's not easy for me to mention those things, but I will talk about how to learn Power BI and I'll share some resources. So hang around for that and use them to enhance your learning. Bruthan asks, in my report, the amount of values comes with comma separator for decimals, but I want it to be a dot. How to format that? Looks like your format settings are set for European values, whereas what I have is US. I'm not really sure how deeply they're integrated with your Windows settings. In Excel, I know that if my Windows is set to be European, then Excel number formats show European things. You could try that. I don't think there is anything here. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, just give it a try by changing your Windows settings and then see if that works. Okay, so there's a few more things, but we'll circle back to them in a minute. But for now, let's see what happens when you save it and how do you share this with others, and so they can read it, because obviously we built this so that someone else can read this. So if you have your Power BI login, then you're able to, if you don't have the login, then you can only save it to your computer and you can email the file, and they need Power BI desktop to open it. But when they read it, they can also change it. That's not a desirable behavior in a data analysis situation where you may want to take control of what is being created and someone else will only read it. They will not edit things or change measures for you. So in that sense, Power BI offers a different paradigm. It's called publish. So when this button won't be available to click unless you log in. but once you log in, you can publish. It'll want you to save the changes, and then it'll ask you where you want to publish. You can select your workspace. I have my workspace here. I'll select that, and then it will publish. So the publishing goes like there is an online platform, powerbi.com, and it will go and sit in your workspace. So some of you might be working in Teams or SharePoint or other things, and you might have already heard the concept of workspace. It's basically like a shared online folder where you put things and others can read, and you can set permissions on who gets to read what and how much they get to see and all of that. So that's pretty much how this thing is set up. And once the publish is done, I can go in, I can log in to my account to access the item as if I am seeing it. But if I share it with, let's say, ABC, then they log in and then they will see if I share it with them. So this is the online side of Power BI. Here, because it is still me that is seeing it, I can go and edit stuff. So editing is also available for me. I can make some minor adjustments and stuff like that. But if I want to change a lot of things, then I need to go back to my Power BI desktop. But if I want, I can kind of share it as well. So if I share, it'll ask me to upgrade. I don't have Pro account, but as I said, if you have Pro account, you can then share. There's a few other options that I could do, but this is what they will see. So instead, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the publish to web option. This is not something that you're encouraged to do for your internal data, because when you publish to web, then everybody in the world can see this. But this is all made up data and it is already shared with the world, so I don't mind doing this. So I'm gonna show you. So I'll open a new window here, just incognito mode so that there's no cookies. So this is how the report looks when you share it eventually. None of the menus or anything will show. It's just the report, and everything is still interactive. So I can click, I can read and all of that. And I can navigate to that other page. And again, it is interactive. So we can use the bar here to navigate, or you can just click on the item to see that. So that is how the sharing side of things work. When you are sharing, again, you can build a sharing view where depending on which device they're watching from. So if they're seeing it on computer, they will see this. But if they go from mobile, you can design an alternate report that will show up on the mobile phone because the screens are small, and all of that is possible through the desktop. So that's a little bit about the sharing side. The last thing that I want to quickly talk about is what if there is some changes to your data, because that's happening all the time, right? You will have new data come in. So I got some extra data here. I'm just gonna quickly update my blank data file. So this is our blank data file, if you remember, and the extra data file is also given to you. So I'm gonna go here and add the data at the end. We'll just assume that that's how the data comes through every time there is new data. So we now have data for 2022, and just add it there, and I'll just save this file, close it, and come back here. Notice all these numbers, and now if you just refresh, this is the process that we use to ask a Power BI to go and get the new data. It gets the data, everything is updated. You can see all these numbers have changed, and now everybody is in 900s. Again, the sort is updated, and depending on who our top 10 are now, they will show up. Amount per boxes will also change. So that's a little bit about the overall journey of how to start from data and how go all the way there. Okay, let's see what questions you have, and so Sahil Siraj says, when I use region or geo, why am I getting a data point as blank 0.8 million? It could be that you have not you may have joined halfway through because we have some problem with the geographical region. There's some extra spaces, so we had to go to Power Query and clean it up. So that was the earlier part. So if you missed that, just rewind back and watch the whole thing when you finish with this. Ayush says, I have sales data in one table for 5 years in many currencies. I want to create a calculated column which shows me data only in dollars. Problem is each year exchange rate is different for each currency. So what you could do is, again, there's multiple ways to solve this problem, but you may want to have a mapping table for the currency rate, exchange rate to use for each currency at each year. So all combinations, you'll have a mapping table. And then I recommend converting everything to dollars at a Power Query level rather than anything in model or in the view levels. So through Power Query, then merge these two tables, get the exchange rate corresponding to the column conditions, and then do the multiplication, get the dollars, and just keep the dollars and remove everything else, and then use that data here. So that's how I would do it. Then you could kind of get really complicated. You could get exchange rate for every month or whatever. Depends how you're calculating. For example, within New Zealand, if you're doing any financial reporting, you're supposed to use officially published exchange rates at the start of every fortnight or month or something. So if you have that kind of data, you can again use that. So Fun Lover says, where is this? Do we need to republish after data addition? Yes. So any refreshes, data changes you do, you need to hit the publish again. It will just warn you, do you want to replace what you have already published? Just click OK and publish. None of the links that you share will change. When they go there again, they will just see the updated data. Focused Falcon says, is Power BI hard to learn if starting with very little knowledge to it? I wouldn't say it's hard to learn. It's a very interesting and powerful software. You want to give it some time to understand and appreciate what everything is, and then see how it connects to your world. So that's where the tricky bit is. Yeah, I would say just give it a few months, maybe half a year, and then you'll be able to learn and use it very well for your work. Sunil says, visualization will be automatically recommended by Power BI based on data type. There's some features there that you could use, and Power BI will build the visuals for you. So there's a Q&A feature. You can ask the question, Power BI will create the visual for you. But I recommend at least taking a better control of these things, because you know a lot more about your data than Power BI itself knows. While it is good at processing the data, it doesn't have the business sense or the analytical sense or that color sense to see what is working. So at least not now. So you should pick up the things and keep it simple. Use tables, use columns, bars, and lines and areas, and that's fine. There's many other visuals. I'm not a huge fan of some of these other things because they tend to create more noise than meaning. But try everything, see what is working with your audience, and go from there. Okay, so let's just go back here and talk briefly about the favorite resources for learning Power BI, because obviously this is a very, very solid introduction. You have gotten a very good idea of what Power BI is and how to use it. But you might be thinking, this is good, but where do I go from here on? So I want to just share some of the things. And these are the channels and the websites and blogs that I recommend for you to learn. When you are learning Power BI, at the start, you might be tempted to think of Power BI as one software, but now that you know that there's actually different components, you need to define learning goals and projects for each layer separately, and then learn. And there are special skills that you need for each. Like Power BI, Power Query requires a bit more data mindset, and a bit more programming. Power Pivot requires a little bit more of calculating and that modeling mindset. And Power BI visual layer requires a little bit more of visual and analytical mindset. Like what works, how do I lay it out, how do I spell these things, which graphs should I choose, what colors to work, and all of that. So each layer requires different mindset, different type of challenges. So when you are learning, again, you want to look for specific resources. My favorite channels that I recommend are Guy in a Cube, and then Karbal, and How to Power BI by Bas, and official Microsoft Power BI channel. I put the links to all of these in the video description. Go and check them out and watch a video or two. And if possible, subscribe to them and learn from them as well. The official websites and blogs, you could go to Power BI blog. They put a monthly update, which is a very good starting place for you to learn and see what else is happening within the Power BI space. If you want to learn a bit more on Power Pivot, I recommend checking out Accelerator BI, or just Google and find things for you. If you think my style is working for you, you can just put Chandu at the end of your search queries and see if I have got any articles or videos on that topic, and use that. Of course, apart from all of these, I have my own stuff as well. I got my YouTube channel. I do live streams, sometimes on Power BI, but sometimes on other things. So the one thing that I want to mention is a couple of different things that I do on Power BI. So if you go to my website, you will find that. So there is a class that I run called Power BI Playdate. This is a more detailed kind of, think of this live stream and then add 10 more live streams to it without any interruptions of questions or any other deviations. That's what this Power BI Playdate is. It is an online self-paced class. You can join and you can learn at your own pace. So feel free to check that out. If you think this will help you, go and sign up. So there's different ways in which you can go for this, just Power BI alone, or I also run a Excel and dashboards program, so you can combine that and go for that. So this is one option. The other option, this is something that I thought might be more helpful for people who enjoy learning it in a live interactive way like this, is I'm doing a live Power BI cohort in the third week of March. So it's happening between 21st to 25 of March. Each day there will be a 3-hour class, just like this live stream, but it is much more closed with a smaller group, and it happens on Zoom. So if this is something that you enjoy and you think this way of learning where we do some things, you ask questions, and then I help you out immediately, but in a much more shorter group, then the cohort is a better option. It is slightly pricier than my online Power BI class, but definitely worth the time and effort that you put into it. I ran it last year on November, and we got glowing reviews from everybody who attended. Around 24 people attended, and some of them might even be on this live stream, but if not, that's fine. So if this is something that you think you will enjoy, go and check it out. I'll put a link for this in the video description, both of them as well. That's that. Because this is a live cohort, there's very limited spots in this, and it happens at a specific time. So you will of course get recordings and workbooks and everything, but that's that. Let me see if there is any questions or comments, but so Sahil says, looks like your menus and options are different from mine. How do I update? So if you go to help and click on about, this will tell you which version of Power BI you're running. So for example, I'm running December 2021 version. I'm expecting that the Jan 2022 version might come out sometime soon. It's already 29th of Jan here in New Zealand, so it might be here. Otherwise, we might just see the February version directly. But you can see the version here, and you can go file. somewhere here there should be an update option or something like that. I don't see the update option here. This is because I installed it through Microsoft Store, so it's an app on my computer and I can manage it through the Microsoft Store. But otherwise you can just go to your programs and then update it from there as well. Yep. As I said, somebody might be even here. Bjorn is here. He attended the cohort back in November, and and he says I learned a huge amount in 3 days. So thanks Bjorn for that. And Jobin says thank you so much for the session, sir. Thank you so much for attending. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found all of these ideas helpful to take your journey forward within Power BI. And And Peter says a crazy big one is Razor Ad's Hughes books, really good one and free. Yes, of course, Razor Ad is a very good resource as well. The reason why I didn't recommend it as part of my list of recommendations is once you, because there's a kind of like an evolutionary ladder on the Power BI. When you're just getting started, sometimes the material from Razor Ad can overwhelm you. But there are levels you can go through, and once you go to certain place, then you will obviously eventually bump into Razor Ad and Marco and all of these other wonderful people that are doing amazing work on Power BI. Kiran says, will I need any graduate degree for data analyst role, even for intern role? I'm not really sure. Certainly companies are maturing with respect to their stance on whether you need a prior degree or academic qualification to do technical and data work. But that said, having some sort of structured education is always helpful. So yeah, if possible, maybe get a graduation somewhere, I guess. I did have graduation and post graduation, and I find that having gone through that experience has been immensely valuable to me as both an individual and a business person, and now what I'm doing. So I think that is a good thing to do. But yeah, you might want to test the waters, see, apply, and then talk to some people, see if they're willing to take people on without any prior academic qualifications. Chinny says, which physical book you reference for Power BI? So Power BI is a tricky thing because there's 3 different things. There's no one book that kind of covers everything. I'll show you some of my books. They're right here behind me, waiting for me to pull them out. So the 2 books that I would probably start are this one, Supercharge Power BI by Matt Allington. So this is the Accelerator BI. So this is a very good book. I highly recommend it to learn the Power Pivot side of things, the calculation layer. And this is another book, M is for Data Monkey. So this is an older edition, but there's a newer version as well. If you want to learn a whole lot more about the Power Pivot, Power Query side of things, this is by Ken Pils and Miguel Escobar. So both of these are the books that I read and I kind of learned. I'll put a link to these 2 books in my description. Check them out. There's a few more books as well. I'll put them there. In terms of the actual visuals and report creation, I didn't read any books simply because I come from that background of having built many dashboards and reports in Excel, so I know how to build these things, and I have a natural sense for it. So I just went and did my own things. But you might search on Amazon. I'll again link 1 or 2 from my bookstore recommendations. So those are there. Okay. Akin Tayo says, you always dish out great content with simplicity. Thank you, Chendu. Thank you so much, Akin Tayo. It's good to have you, and I hope you enjoyed this one as well. Um, Muhammad asks, is there any Python session? Um, so Python is something that kind of keep popping up in the comments. I saw many of them saying that. So um, to be honest, I don't know Python well enough to kind of do it in a live stream masterclass kind of thing. Doing a live stream puts a lot of pressure on you as well, right? Because you could ask any question. I don't know who is going to come up and what questions you're going to ask. Um, so that's where I feel more comfortable dealing with topics that I'm fairly comfortable and confident about, or at least have a direction in which I can point you. I do Python programming for fun, and I was actually talking to my wife and kids that maybe we should do like a 30-day challenge where every day we do Python coding for 10 minutes and then see where that will take us. But to be honest, because I'm not really I'm self-employed. I work for myself. Running this YouTube channel business and my courses is what I do, and nowhere in this spectrum I'm required to use Python for anything realistic. So for me, it is hard to kind of get a reason for me to learn Python. But maybe I will do it for fun later on this year, and if things work out, you might see some Python stuff as well. Muhammad says, how to link MySQL. So just as we linked Excel file, you'll go to home, get data, and click on more. And from here, you will find MySQL database. And then just follow the prompts, type your query or pick the table, and then that'll be it. Peter also says, Rob Colley and Avi Singh's book is also good. You don't say that. This is the original Power Pivot book. You could see like how torn up this is. This is a book that I bought way back in 2010 or 11, I think, and I read it so many times. This book, so 2012, and it has traveled with the world with me. So this is the original Rob Colley's book, and I think he later on wrote a book with Avi as well. So that's a good one as well. So Siddhant says, knowing Excel data source in Power BI everything, or should we learn other data sources as well? In all likelihood, in business situations, you are more likely to get data from a SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle, or SAP or cloud than Excel files alone. So you may want to learn how to work with data sources beyond Excel, and just do that. Don't delay it. When I'm teaching, it's very hard for me to show the SQL connections or anything, because that means you also need to have access to the servers, and they get a little bit too tricky to maintain, and privacy and all of that. Whereas if I share the Excel file, I can just give you the file and you can point it out. So that's easy from a demo perspective. But in real life situations, you're always connecting to databases or cloud platforms. So learn how to work with them. And yeah, I think Siddhant, you're just spamming now. So how to open Excel 97 2003 worksheet in Power BI. I haven't tried this in a long time. I don't know. Does it not show up as a Excel workbook, or what is happening? If there is a problem, you may want to just try the CSV. I remember reading something on Twitter about the Excel S file format having some issues with Power Query. So it could be that. Stephen says, I'll be 68 soon. Congratulations. Worked as a mainframe programmer, did data extraction from texted and loaded to database. Do I have a reasonable job of getting job as a data analyst? It's hard for me to say, but I'm pretty sure with all your experience and prior skills, you might be able to get even a higher position than junior data analyst. Again, depends on what you have learned and where that industry is, and it is very very hard for me to say, really, to be honest. So yeah, but you may want to um, talk to someone local, or I'm not the person to give you that answer, I think. um, Okay, so that's Dior says thanks from Senegal. Thank you so much, and I think that's pretty good. We went on for well beyond 2 hours. This is probably my longest live stream in a in a while, and definitely the longest this year. So I hope you all enjoyed what I shared today. As I mentioned, the files, some of them are already uploaded, but this particular workbook, the one that you're seeing on the screen, I will save it. I will put it for download later in an hour or two. So come back to the YouTube page, check it out, and download it. And the replay link will be there for some time. So feel free to check back and watch the replay if you want. And thanks everyone for attending. Big thanks to those of you who gave a super chat or a super message. Thank you so much. And yeah, it was fun catching up with you, sharing some of the things, and hopefully we'll do again next month on a different topic. So every month on the last Friday, I do a live stream. This is your first time coming here, then you could kind of think that again next month, last Friday of the month, I will do the live stream. So if you got any suggestions for any topics, feel free to post them in the chat or in the comments below, or I'll run a poll sometime halfway through the month asking what topic should we do the live stream on. So feel free to share that. And thank you everyone. I could see many of our regulars tuned in, but there's more people as well. So if this is your first time, thank you. If this is a repeat on the live stream, big thanks for you as well. And I'll catch you again next month. Bye bye, and you have a beautiful day ahead.